It's me again. Successful people love to talk about what made them successful, and other people love to hear it because they want to know how to be successful themselves. However, whenever successful people talk about success strategies, something always comes up. People are always like, well, that worked for you, but there's a lot of luck involved. It might not be that way for someone else. Someone else might bust their ass their whole life and never make it anywhere. So it's irresponsible of you to talk about these strategies as if they're going to work for the audience. To which I have to respond, what do you think is the alternative? Not everybody who works hard is going to see benefit. But everybody who sees benefit is going to be someone who worked hard. You see what I'm saying? Look, the fact of the matter is that we have to engage with the system realistically. We have to engage with the world we live in on the terms of what it actually is and what is possible or even probable within the system that we inhabit. So first we need to describe what is the system. If you live in America, I'm not going to speak for the rest of the world because honestly I don't know enough of the complex nuances of what's going on everywhere to be able to have a conversation about it. However, here in America I can tell you a lot about the kind of people who are here and what kind of systems are driving those people, what is motivating people to live their lives the way that they're living it. I've lived all over this goddamn country, and I've met fuck tons of people, plus I've got an internet job, so I see even more people online. And there is a big disparity between the online world and the real world, and that factors into what I'm going to describe a lot as well. I guess the best metaphor I could use to start with is that of the ivory tower of academia. There's always this idea that academics are off in their own world trying to, suss out the exact meaning of everything, and they are not really worried about communicating that stuff to the common populace except in a sort of trickle-down effect, as it were, because, frankly, it's a pain in the ass to try to keep the conversation going amongst not only such a huge number of people, but such a huge number of people who will take longer to understand the things that some people can understand more easily. It's unfortunate to say something like that, but it's true. There are people who are just smarter and are going to understand things quicker and can progress the conversation at a brisker clip than the general populace. I'm including myself in that general populace. I wouldn't make it in academia because I'm not necessarily a fast thinker. I'm just a fast talker. I just got a lot of time on my hands to think. So much in that same vein, you have the internet. On the internet, a certain type of people tend to congregate. Usually people who are not finding meaningful social connections in their everyday lives. Now, granted, over time, more and more people have come to the internet so that they can further their social interactivity beyond what it is offline. But still, for the most part, the average person's interaction with the internet is not nearly to the extent of somebody who lives on Twitter or who lives on social media, who's all over YouTube. People like me. People like me who have been forumites since before it was even fucking popular to be on the internet. I got on the internet in 2001, so I've been here for a pretty fucking long time. And this, in many ways, is a sort of ivory tower scenario. The sort of conversations that we're having online have no fucking effect on the rest of the world. And they hear the stuff we talk about, and they're often just confused and in the dark, and they don't get where this stuff is coming from. And some of them are willing to just say, okay, well, it sounds like the conversation's been had, so I'll trust in it, in the same way that a lot of people do with academia or the science world, where, all this stuff is figured out, and then they give us a paper, and the TV news reports on that paper, and we all take it as fact until 2 years later when another paper comes along stating the opposite. But for most of the world, they don't really know what we're talking about online. They don't really give a shit about the way we're discussing things because they're more concerned with everyday life events. And much in the same way that in that ivory tower of academia, there are lots and lots of people who are, they go straight from high school into college, they live in that world forever, and they never really have to confront the reality of what the world is actually like for the average person. They understand how it functions, but they've never had to live within it. And much the same thing can be said about a lot of internet discourse, because so much of the internet skews young, especially the people who have the most time to participate. The people who live the most on social media are mostly either people who are young enough that they're in school, and therefore they don't have to worry about the number of shit, the amount of shit that an adult has to worry about that would occupy their time and keep them off of social media, or they are somebody who is like me and has a career on the internet and therefore can excuse an endless amount of time spent on social media as marketing or, you know, communication with fans or whatever excuse you're using to waste your fucking time. So just for a bit, let's break down American wealth disparity and the way that people at different social classes are feeling about their lives and what their goals are. So you've got, at the very bottom, the lower class, the people who have either an unfortunate background, or maybe they're not in the right mental or physical state, or people who just don't comprehend how to find a higher station in life, or are just at the bottom and they're working their way up. A lot of these people, a huge percentage of them, are going to have a lot of interest in social welfare, in socialist systems. These are people who want to be taken care of, and a lot of them need to be taken care of in order to make it through life. Now, there is a subset of these people who believe that they are going to make it to a higher station, either rightfully or wrongfully. And so they want the system to be more capitalistic because they want to be able to eventually rise to something a lot higher than they are. Because everybody wants to be in the high upper class. Now, the people who are in the highest class, the people making the most money, the billionaires, the people who have just ass fuck tons of money, most of these people have inherited their wealth. Most of the money that exists is owned by these people, and most of that wealth is handed down through generations. There are very few people who are able to newly become a part of this highest bracket, and those people have a epic confluence of luck and privilege and right place, right time. You know, even someone like Donald Trump, when you hear him say something like a small loan of $1 million, it's like, yeah, from the perspective of being in this group, that is a small loan. That is, like, he really did start from what from these people's perspective would be the bottom, but that's because, you know, and to make it to this point, he had to basically fight from just below this up into this. But most people who are in this, they don't have to fight their way into this. They just are in this. These people have every incentive to want a capitalist system. The only reason they would ever want something else is if they were going to be in charge of it. If they were going to be able to control the populace to do whatever they want, as long as they get to keep what they have. These people have by far the biggest influence on everybody below them because they control everything. They have enough money that they can just, in the same way that you might say, like, oh, I'm going to buy a TV after my next raise. These people are like, I'm going to buy a TV network after my next raise, and I'm going to have them, you know, spread propaganda for whatever products I own and, you know, just utilize it to continue compounding my own wealth. You know, these people are all in a game with each other to take one another's money, but they don't, you know, their money comes from you, but they don't care about any individual person. It's like they're taking money from everybody. It's a competition to see who can get the other rich person's money, you know, vis-a-vis the populace below. But these people control everything. Now, because of this, because everybody wants to be these people, people from all these lower groups are going to be like, I want to live in this capitalist system so that I can move up to this point. You're not going to reach that point. That realistically is not going to happen. Where you might end up, though, is in this category of millionaires, of famous people, of people who were able to build something up from the ground. Not likely, probably not going to be you. But we know that we have a chance of reaching here. Now, is this even a good place to be? Like, what level of misery might you incur on your way here? Because the fact of the matter is, money does not bring happiness. This is impossible for people down here to understand because money is the cause of their unhappiness, the lack thereof. However, the people up here, on average, are not necessarily happier than the people below them. They just have the opportunity to do whatever the hell they want. And everybody wants that opportunity. But these people are a rare breed. And again, it is a confluence of luck and right place, right time, and being the right man for the job, so to speak. But, you know, it's doable for some of us to reach this level. And ergo, we want this to exist. Now, the people who are in that position, they're sort of divided because some of them, well, I would say most of them, probably relish in the capitalistic system since they're so successful within it. But there are a lot of them who have more of a philanthropist edge, who don't necessarily think that it's right that they exist. But, you know, it's going to be more capitalistic, obviously. So we have the biggest chunk of the populace, which is the middle class. The middle class can be divided into two halves, the upper middle and the lower middle. The lower middle class is the average citizens working the average jobs. A lot of them came up from down here. Some of them are worried about falling back down to here. And these people are pretty evenly split because most of them think that they're going to make it at least to here, possibly to here. Whereas the other half are just like, I could take any support I could get, you know? And then you got the upper middle class. And these people, depending on their age, have very different, depending on how they got there, have different ideas. Because some people in this upper middle class are like, I built myself up from down here. I want this capitalist system because it's how I got here. You know, they're like, I came from the bottom and now I'm fucking successful. And there's others who like have inherited this position and they don't really see the value in what they have. They don't really appreciate it because this is like, you know, dipshit college students who fucking have everything handed to them and don't understand the struggle that their parents went through to get to where they are. And a lot of those people are like, we got to be helping these people down here. We can't, this is like, we're being selfish. We need to have a more socialist practice and help those people. This is the way people are thinking in the country. So the long story short there is that most people in this country want a capitalist system. Most of them want the ability to become more successful than they are. Most of them are seeing people above their station and saying, I want to be that guy. And if you try to imagine a system where you tell people that you are only allowed to have as much as the government says you can have, or that you have to redistribute your wealth in order to help out other people, those people are going to be offended because they think, well, I've grown up my whole life seeing people up on this tier, knowing that this lifestyle was possible, and I haven't given up on making it to that lifestyle. How dare you suggest that I'm not allowed to have that? To more socially minded people, this seems incredibly selfish. They're like, what about the greater good? What about helping as many people as possible? Wouldn't that benefit you too in the long run if we had everybody trying to work towards being happier, healthier people and, you know, having a stronger sense of community and stuff like that? Well, here's the problem with that. Who gets to decide what is a happy, healthy populace? People like me have a lot of distrust for community, because we see that for the longest time, community was mostly propagated by the church. It was mostly religion that put a lot of people, you know, into feeling like they all had to live the same kind of way. You use religion to tell people these are the rules that you need to abide in order to be a good person. And, you know, most people who don't agree with those religions have been persecuted over time. Now, America is a great place where we decided that you could believe whatever religion you want, and that's fine. Build your own communities with your religions, and just don't fuck with the other communities and their religions. If you are in a community and you don't agree with its religion, you can go to a different community or forge your own somewhere in this big-ass country. But that's the thing. Human beings will naturally factionalize. We will naturally form groups and cliques based around our mutual ideas of what we think is right. And this can boil down to, like, it's so ingrained that people will find something to factionalize over. Even if we all agree that religion is bunk, at the end of the day you'll have PS2 versus GameCube people. You know, like, people will find something to categorize themselves with so that they can have a sense of community. People want to belong to something. They want to be in a concentrated group that has a group identity. And when you go online and you go on social media, you can just literally watch this happen. People just choosing which identity they think makes sense to them, getting into that group, and then just towing the line completely, following every rule that that group sets about what they think is right. However, all of these people are occupying the same space. They're all on the same social media platforms. It's not a bunch of groups that each have their own website like it used to be back in the early days of the internet, back when it was sort of understood that the purpose of the internet was to find your tribe if that tribe didn't exist in a physical space around you. But, like, now it's a bunch of tribes all occupying Twitter, and they're all at war with each other. But it's a war of ideas. Instead of a physical war of resources, the way that wars used to be fought, it's people fighting over what they think is right. And the reason that they're fighting is that they are all under this gigantic umbrella of America, or the world, or, you know, whatever political structure they're a part of, where their disagreements have impact on each other. And what it's making people realize is that either we all need to come to more agreements on what will fulfill the most people possible broadly, or we need further splintering. We need to be able to self-govern our cliques and groups so that we can have our rules and bar out people who disagree with them. People talk about filter bubbles and, like, intellectual isolationism as though it's this gigantic problem. And I mean, if you want to be a well-rounded person who can have more meaningful conversations with people from different groups, then yes, you should learn more and not be so closed-minded. But the fact of the matter is that that's not going to benefit you as a human being. As a human being, what would benefit you the most would be to find a clique or community that you are happy in and shut off the rest of the world. To live out your life within that space. Because at the end of the day, the way that it makes the most sense for humans to live is in small groups, in tribes. It doesn't make sense for us to live as a global community with everybody setting the same rules and the same standards for us all to live by. It's just not the way that humans work. And the funny thing about it is that everybody is already a part of something based on just where you're born. Wherever you happen to be born is going to have a huge effect on who you end up being as an adult. You know, like, what country you're born in is going to matter a whole lot because the people surrounding you have intrinsically affected your mind. You think like the people around you. Even if there's a ton of discordance, it's nowhere near the discordance that it would be from somebody from a completely different background. And there's just no way to really change that about yourself. So when you go online and you see people from totally different backgrounds, it's like you can't even believe that somebody feels the way that they feel, but it's because where they're from, it's normal. And when you get online and you start subdividing into groups based on what you want your clique to be like, ideally, you would all form together, form a community, and be able to have your own place, your own conversations, your own way of life. But again, those communities all exist within the broader space of everybody's a part of something bigger. This is not going to change within our lifetimes. Why? There are too many people. There are too many people on planet Earth for you to communicate with a large enough number of them, to educate a large enough number of people, to make them understand what is a sensible way for humans to live. There is no way that we're going to gather everybody together and say, hey, look, on a global scale, we'll all agree to these rules, these baseline rules, and then from there, all of you can break off into your own groups that have their own rules that can choose to interact with one another on the basis of, what they think is right. We're not going to trade with this country, this community, because they do this. We will trade with these guys. And, if you guys want to change something about yourselves so that you can work with us, that's fine. Now, the reason this never worked throughout history was resource scarcity and war. We could just kill other people if we didn't like the way that they think. But that's become less and less probable in a society where mutual assured destruction exists, where, mega powers can't just go to war because they're going to fucking destroy the world. And resources are now, because of the technological advancements that make it possible for us to manage resources differently, or even to alleviate our dependency on certain resources, it makes it so there's less of an impact of those elements on society. However, those things still matter. Obviously, if you try to form your own clique and it's in a place where you can't have the access to the modern living that another nation has, you're gonna be, you're gonna feel like you got the short end of the stick. So are you gonna concede more of yourself so that you can participate in that nation? If you do so, then you need to do so with the knowledge that you are doing so. But most of us are just born into a country, and we can't necessarily escape it. It's not so easy to change your citizenship, to leave behind the rule set that you are a part of without an enormous amount of effort and knowledge in doing so. And where the hell are you going to go? Where are you going to go to just build your own thing? It's kind of a lot. Fucking, I am getting hot. I'm getting a little bit off in the weeds. The point I'm sort of trying to make here is that we are not going to break into a bunch of individual cliques and communities that self-govern within my lifetime, because you're not going to be able to change the tide of the way people think in such a short span of time. Now, I do think that there are sort of cataclysmic revolutions that will come in the next 20 years or so. The biggest one is going to be all the boomers dying out. Because the baby boomers, by and large, they don't know anything about the internet. They don't understand the way that the cultural conversation is going. They're not in that ivory tower. And more people are interacting with, at the very least, the ideas being discussed on the internet, because they are not closed off. Anyone can access it. The problem is that for the older generations, they just don't comprehend it, and they don't even care to. And if you didn't see that whole court case where Google had to answer to, I believe, the Supreme Court or whatever it was, where they just embarrassingly had no fucking idea about literally anything of how the internet works, it makes you realize that the people in charge of this country, they just don't understand what's happening in this country at all. And this is causing tons of problems for tons of people, because there's an entire commerce, an entire industry, a whole second world being built on top of the world we live in, and the people who are in charge of that second world don't understand it at all. They don't even know what it is. It's just built over top of the world that they govern, and so they're in charge of it, but they don't know what it is. And until that changes, you're not going to see any of the stuff that's discussed on the internet have a real revolutionary effect on the world outside of it. Meanwhile, if within this this unbreak-apartable bigger government that is overlaying everybody, in that system, if you were to say, well, okay, if we all have to be within the same government, let's try to figure out a set of rules that works for everybody, well, you're never going to find that, because everybody disagrees about it, partly because they live in different places. You've got 6 giant city cluster regions in America that have very different cultures and personalities, and within those groups there's totally different ideas about what the world is supposed to be, either culturally or just, in terms of, trade, or, what makes sense. Just, all those places totally disagree with each other. And then you go online, and there's one group that might say, well, here are obvious, unalienable rights and things that people should believe in, and then another group who feels the exact opposite. And you're not just, there's no magic words you're going to say that's going to make that other side think that what you're saying is right. You're not going to win that battle. There is no victory for creating a a full-blown version of any kind of like socialist system in America because there's too much opposition force. You're just not getting it. So yes, you can move goalposts ever so slightly in one direction or another by constantly warring with, either culturally, like trying to change people's minds individually, but everybody you win to your side, somebody else wins to the other side. And they just grow more and more factionalized and more against each other, and it doesn't go anywhere. Nobody has their minds changed who you need to change the minds of in order to make what you want to happen. You're just gathering troops. You're gathering troops for a war as opposed to bringing everybody together. You're creating a hard line between the two sides, and therefore nothing can get done because everyone disagrees. Whereas if you got everyone in on a conversation whose goal was not to move everyone on the other side to their extreme, then at least we can have conversations about what can be done. You can't change the other side entirely. You can find concessions between the two sides to try to make them agree on certain things. What does all of this have to do with preaching success strategies? Well, simply that we do live in a capitalist system where if you want to succeed, you have to live a certain way. If you harbor a victim mentality and want the world to take care of you, it won't. There are people who will help you, who, will take your side, and they will protest and battle and try to get the rest of the world to feel the same way they do, and it's not going to happen. You can probably find a sense of community with those people. You might even be able to succeed by becoming, a voice within that community, but that community is never going to win, just as the other side is also not going to win. The only people who win in a capitalist society are individuals, and that includes corporations because they're recognized as individuals, because the world is strange. You will not get anywhere telling people what to do. It's not going to work. What will work sometimes is if you put it all on yourself and you say, okay, if nobody's going to help me, if nobody's going to listen to me, if nobody's going to think that what I'm saying is correct or come over to my side, what can I do? And the answer to that is, look at the way that success is possible, which you can find out by listening to other people who have done it, and then try to do that as hard as you possibly can. And yes, there are a lot of people who are going to try their best and fail, either because they are misunderstanding the point, or they are just in a really bad situation, they're really unlucky, or maybe the way that they ultimately want to live their life doesn't coincide with the way that you can be successful. And that's the most unfortunate thing about a capitalist system, is that everybody wants to paint it as though, oh, this is a system where you get to do whatever you want. Well, you can't be successful doing whatever you want. Being successful just means doing an extremely specific thing, which is marketing yourself, marketing correctly, figuring out how to make the most possible people buy into whatever it is that you're selling, even if that's just your services as a worker. Like, say that you work for Target and you're a cashier. You're selling yourself to Target. You're providing them a service in exchange for money. You cannot survive without providing some kind of service to the rest of the world. But that is also very humane. That is the only way that the system really makes sense, because otherwise we're taking care of you for doing whatever you want, and that has no benefit to us. In a capitalist society, it all just comes down to, are you beneficial? And beneficial is what that means can be anything. Like, what I do, it does not seem beneficial by any conventional definition, but enough people think that it is, that they allow me to continue living. So you are just required to be a benefit to society in as much as you can. And if you can't be that, you know, like, we do want to try and take care of you as best we can, but at the same time, like, it's not, like, everyone's responsibility to take care of everyone else because, frankly, you are not benefiting us. There used to be a time, there were societies where if they thought they couldn't take care of somebody, they just got rid of them. And it's, you know, that's really unfortunate. You leave them on the hills of Thermopylae, as I always say. But, like, you know, we want to try and take care of people because we believe that there is the possibility that they could be beneficial. You know, that, yeah, you might be, you know, completely full-body paralyzed, but maybe you're as smart a thinker as Stephen Hawking with a little training, you know? Like, we want to believe in the potential of everybody to be beneficial. But ultimately, if you aren't, then why would the world take care of you? It just doesn't make any sense from their perspective. And even if we implemented a system where, yes, we did take care of everyone and make sure that everybody had opportunity, ultimately we're doing that at expense to ourselves for moralization so that we can believe that we're doing the right thing. And that's not what governs human instinct. That's not what, you know, societies are founded on the basis of. Like, this is always survival of the fittest. It is nature. You know, it's the way that things work. We have to be in competition with each other in order to live when there are limited resources. And thankfully, we live in a society where, there's the phrase, we live in a society where, like, you know, I can provide something other than a traditional resource and still be able to survive. There is so much opportunity in the world right now. There is so much opportunity to succeed. And the only way you're going to do it is by approaching it with the mentality of, I need to succeed. If you don't approach it with the mentality that you are going to yourself take what you need from the world, you're not going to get what you need. And yes, you can argue for a system where you would be able to get that, but it's not going to be implemented within your lifetime because you're not going to shift the tide, not when you have so little control over the populace, when those 1% are the ones exercising the most influence over everybody, and when the average person is completely content and docile to just engage whatever those people are giving them, to just live the life that is being provided to them by that 1% and just be fine with it. And you're not going to get those people angry enough to come fight for you, because there's not enough of you for them to broadly give a fuck. So it's all on you. And it will be for your lifetime. So yes, you should preach success strategies. Yes, maybe some of those successful people can acknowledge more that the system is broken and that not everybody's going to succeed. But at the end of the day, thinking about that and fixating on that fact isn't helping you. The only thing that will help you is taking the approach of, I'm going to try my fucking hardest to crack this goddamn glass ceiling, you know, and be as successful as I can be by my own merits. Hopefully that made any fucking sense at all.